very good afternoon to all of you and welcome to the Sunset Safari. My name is Jamie and this afternoon Ferg is on camera with me, and we do apologize for the late beginning. It was just one of those things, gremlins attacking everywhere, confusing comms and all sorts of things, but we're up and running and it's lovely to enjoy your company. Please send through questions and comments on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Let us go out and see what the marvelous Masai Mara has to offer. You know what you will notice? It's the afternoon in the Mara and there's sun shining. It's quite incredible after the pattern of the last few days. By the way, I know about the roof. We have fully replaced the rain covers on our vehicles. I'm really sorry about the flapping. We'll address it as soon as we can. But at the moment, the price we are paying for being completely waterproof is flapping. It's just one of those things. But we're very excited because oh goodness, it's a bit muddy. We're very excited because our rain covers are now waterproof on all three vehicles. So Scott's going to be out a little bit late, just because they're putting the final touches on Mila. But we've got very fancy new rain covers. We've even got a window in the front so that we aren't completely without the ability to see when we put the rain covers down. Whoopsie! So those of you who are becoming familiar with the area that we're in, you might recognize this particular drainage line, this particular area. This is the Sausage Tree Pride's lugger or river system. They like to hang out here. I had them yesterday on the sunrise safari on a zebra kill. I doubt they're still there. I'm pretty sure they will have finished it. It wasn't a particularly large zebra. Shush roof. It was quite a small zebra. So I suspect that the two lionesses and their 4 cubs would probably have finished it. I thought I'd won there. Just drive really slowly. Really slowly. I wonder what it is. I wonder if we can tighten something. No, I don't think so. I think we'll just have to put up with it for now. The price we pay, the rainy season is upon us, or at least the small rains are upon us. And oh, I said it's not raining on us, but there's some very dark clouds up towards the escarpment. But we shall see. We shall see exactly how the afternoon plays out. I think it's quite ironic that we finished all of the rain covers and it's the first afternoon without rain. But that was bound to happen. That's Murphy's Law. Vegas says don't speak too soon. I know, especially here. And these escarpment roads get muddy very quickly. We could find ourselves... Oh, I've got the marshmallow pin that I made that I have to wear because I started it. Oh goodness, I'm about to have to wear double. Come on, come on. Doesn't look that muddy, which is what I've learned in the Mara. You think the road looks okay and you just sink. I made us a little marshmallow pin, so whoever gets stuck has to wear it, but I forgot to bring it. Oops. Accidental. Chris, you would like to know what the name of the escarpment or the mountain actually is ahead of us. So the name for the escarpment, this line of mountains ahead of us, is the Olololo escarpment, and it means crooked, essentially, in Ma. So it basically means the line of mountains that is not straight. And I cannot remember the first. It's one of those words that just doesn't want to stay in my mind. Oh. Bit of muddy water. It's one of those names that I keep forgetting the first part of, but it's everybody talks about it as the Olololo escarpment. O-L-O-O-L-O-L-O. Did I get that right? I would be impressed if I got that right. Did that in a hurry. So the Olololo escarpment, there's a first part to the name and I can't remember what it is. Begins with an E. I will remember. At some point I will remember. Any sign of the sausages? No, but there is a spectacular male waterbuck that we'll go and have a look at. It's such a pity we didn't actually start a little bit earlier because we had all the animals. Giraffe, zebra. I checked on the pregnant zebra at the base of the mountain. You know how I've been speaking about the fact that there's some zebra that are just about to pop. There's one zebra with one ear, and she is days away, I think, from giving birth. So I check up on her every time I pass down that road. Look for new babies. Woo! Whee! Could go into low range, but where's the fun in that? It's not a proper game drive if you're not covered in mud. We're just going to stop here and have a quick look before this waterbuck, this male waterbuck, it disappears into the thick vegetation. Oh, he is posing beautifully for us. Hey, boy. Now, we have a question coming through from the ACTEM conference, which is an association for computer technology, and it's lovely to have all of you guys joining us this afternoon. Now, you would like to know when the animals in this area, when the animals are most active. The best time to be out and about is probably around about the time just before dawn and just after dawn, and just before sunset and after sunset. So obviously you get the sort of division between diurnal and nocturnal animals, but that division isn't particularly distinct out here. And most of the animals are at their most active, whether we're talking about lions, hyenas, antelope, or cheetah, for example. Most of them are at their most active at those times of the day, which is one of the big reasons why our sunset and our sunrise safaris are timed in the way that they are. It's geared towards the best possible viewing times to see the animals. And it's great because it's the sort of the changing of the guard, to use a somewhat hackneyed phrase, but the nocturnal animals are going to bed, the diurnal animals are waking up, and you get that switch around towards the evening. So that's the best time to be around. We spend a lot of time, or we have spent a lot of time, staying up all night with some of the animals. What's really interesting about the Sausage Tree Pride, and by the way, I am the only person at the moment with any picture, so you're going to be hearing me nattering for a little while. It was really interesting following the Sausage Tree Pride overnight, who only started hunting as soon as the moon set. Exactly when the moon set, they got up and started hunting. I was mistaken. I'm not the only feed out. The marvelous news is you will be traveling not only the Mara, but South Africa as well. Off you go to Tristan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a gloomy, overcast, fairly chilly Djuma Game Reserve this afternoon. It's not the sunny weather we were hoping for, but, well, welcome to see the clouds anyway, and hopefully a little bit of rain. Now, as Jamie mentioned, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Wiem the Wildebeest, and we are coming to you live from South Africa, which means hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or YouTube chat, should you want to get hold of us and ask us any questions, or just say hello from wherever you are watching. Now, we've been out for quite some time. We've been driving around, just looking around. We've checked Treehouse Dam, we've checked Twin Dams, checked a little bit of Twin Dams Road, not too much. I'm now on Vulture's Nest, just having a little look around, hoping for any sign of our spotted cats. I did find a track just now that looked like for a leopard. It was really not in a great place. It was a hard substrate, and it was just really a smear, and it seems as though somebody did a bushwalk today during the day from Djuma, and they all walked there, so it's not really easy to see their tracks. So I'll wait for the Djuma guys to get going, because they might be able to give me an update as to what's going on with those tracks and whether or not they tracked that down and found anything. Now, the plan for the afternoon is that we are a little bit limited in that we've got a few technical glitches, so I can't head to Chitwa, and Gowrie Repeater is not working very well, so I'm going to have to stay in Vuyatela range. So my plan is probably just to work around as much as I can around sort of Chelapan, center parts of Djuma, and hope that I can pick up something on Tandi or Tamba or Hosana in those areas. And then there was also some Ellies that I heard vocalizing around Galagopan earlier today, so we might go and have a little look for them. And failing all of that, well, Hyena Den will be towards sunset is probably where we'll head. So that's the kind of plan for the afternoon. I did get a report that Tingana is on Chitwa somewhere this morning. He was resting in one of the thickets there. So hopefully he gets moving and starts to come in our direction. Now, something that Tingana would love to feed on is that little animal that is bounding away at the moment. It's a little male steenbok, our smallest antelope that we get here, and even though it's tiny, that is as big as they get. They is fully grown adult individual, so I'm sure the female must be somewhere close by in this general vicinity, but you can see how well they camouflage. So even though they're small animals and you would think they'd be hunted by a lot of different things, just shows you how well they can blend into their environment. And this is their tactic, is as soon as they're spotted by something, they'll try and bound, get behind some sort of a thicket, lie down and try and then, or just try and stand very still and utilize that coloration to blend in and try and then get away from that predator. So it's a very clever strategy that they've got. Unfortunately, though, it makes it difficult for us to watch them for very long periods of time. Now, something else that can be a little bit tough and difficult to view for long periods of time is mongoose, but hopefully Jamie's mongoose are going to stay stationary and you'll all get a little look.
I'm hoping so as well, and I think we've been lucky because this shy group of banded mongoose have been disappearing behind the termite mound. There we go. Popping up. Head popping up. Come on, guys. Come back out. Oh, it's one of the cutest creatures that we can see out here. And actually, to go back to the discussion we were having, one of the ones that is strictly diurnal. So they're only out during the day. They actually tend to be quite late sleepers. If it's a particularly cold morning, then they pop out of their burrows, sun themselves in the morning, and then go out foraging to be back in time and hidden away as the sun sets in the evening. And of course, because I just saw a tail. Of course, because I want to show you what they look like. They're all being very, very shy. They're right there. I can see movement every now and again. A little head pops up. Now, in South Africa, you can call the dwarf mongoose out, because they're naturally quite curious creatures, and they'll often respond. But I've noticed that the banded mongoose here do not respond as easily. Hello, there we go. They are naturally curious creatures, though, both the banded and the dwarf mongoose, and I'm sure if Tristan comes upon any dwarf mongoose, he'll show them to you. About half the size, in fact, more than half the size, less than half the size of these little bandeds. Look at this little one alarm calling. How wonderful. Hey, you. Here we go, they're talking. I think the rest of the group is behind us, which is why I can hear calling beside me as well. They're anxiously contact calling, making sure all group members are present and accounted for. Little cheeps. Now, often in these situations, it's one of the mature males that actually does the contact calling to the rest of the group and takes quite a bit of responsibility for guarding the group, for keeping watch, looking for predators, anything like that. You could find that this is one of the males. Could also be an anxious mother with youngsters, but I don't think so. Oh, we're going back up the termite mound. I can hear you, little ones, somewhere on my right. Trying to spot them. I'm trying to listen to them. Sounds so like birds. To an unfamiliar ear. There's 3 sets. There's the one we're looking at. There's one behind me, and then there's one in front of me somewhere. Welcome to Graham on our sunset safari. Graham, is an interesting thing about mongooses. Up until relatively recently, they were lumped together in the same family as an animal called a genet. And that is only, well, I say recently, it's something that has only recently been fully recognized in the past decade or so. So the family that the mongoose belong in is their own special family, and it is called the Herpestidae family. So they are herpestids, and that is a family that is very closely related to the Viverridae family, which includes, of course, the genets, and the Mustelidae family, which includes things like weasels and honey badgers. So they are three families that are very, very closely linked, and in terms of their evolutionary background, probably maybe not a shared ancestor, but a closely related ancestor. And what links them is the highly developed anal glands that all members of those three different families have. So the herpestid family, they don't belong to the cat family or the dog family, although if you ever see a genet, which I'm sure at some point you will, if you've watched these safaris or if you continue to watch these safaris, we'll definitely show you a genet. A genet looks like somebody crossed a mongoose with a cat, in my opinion. Some very noisy frogs as well. The sound effects after the rain are actually really lovely. Of course, now the shouting frog has gone quiet. Of course. There you go. Can you hear that, Ferg? Or is it just the wrong direction, just the crickets? Looking at our little mongoose friend, because I'm scared it's going to disappear if we stop looking at it, because obviously that's how it works. Senak, yes, there are nocturnal species of mongoose. One is a white-tailed mongoose. It is a solitary mongoose that we see actually quite regularly on our nocturnal drives around the Mara, and every now and again you see one during the day. And then there is something called a water mongoose, which is also nocturnal. So yes, there are nocturnal mongoose species. The dwarf mongoose, the banded mongoose, and the slender mongoose are all diurnal, though. Bubbling cassinas. Aaron, as far as I know, banded mongoose, and I could stand corrected on this, but I'm pretty certain that banded mongoose they reproduce all year round. So they don't particularly have a strict season, and that would apply to most of the mongoose families out here. And in fact, to be honest, most of the carnivores out here, they don't really need to have a set breeding season, because they're not dependent on the grass. Their prey is around all year round. Their prey is around all year. And for the mongoose, that applies as well. I mean, in the Mara particularly, there's lots of insects around. There's frogs, there's little snakes and reptiles. So there's plenty of food available to them. And really, breeding seasons is basically resource driven. So in the case of the animals in South Africa, because there's just one wet season, and you get the impala births, the warthog births, the wildebeest births, all around the same time, and it coincides perfectly with the rainy season. Whereas for something like a mongoose, a lion, a hyena, it doesn't really matter when they have their little ones. Food availability is pretty much secure all year round. And you'll find that actually the same thing applies in the Mara, even with animals like impala, because there is this excessive amount of resources. I wouldn't say excessive, but there's more in terms of resources out here for them to feed on. They've done away with or at least they haven't developed a strict seasonal reproductive pattern. So you'll get baby impala or impala lambs bounding about at all times of the year. And that's why, of course, the impalas look as large as they do, because they are constantly, rather than having that sort of burst of testosterone in around about May or June, as they do in South Africa, they're constantly having to fight and compete for access to females. Sorry Chantal, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that question. I didn't quite get it. My world, your music. You want to know, why do you often see mongoose burrowing? And the answer to that is because a lot of what they feed on is insects that are living underneath the surface of the soil. So they've got a very, very keen sense of hearing as well as a good sense of smell. And that combined causes them to dig in the ground, to dig up things like worms, grubs. There's a lot of insects that live underneath the surface of the soil, and that's what they're after. In South Africa, you'd see them burrowing in particular to go after scorpions, and occasionally you do actually see them unearthing scorpions during that process. Excuse me. And that's essentially why they're doing it. They can also burrow in order to help to excavate their den sites. Oh dear, we lost it now. And just by the way, although they do have a hierarchy, banded mongoose are not as strict as dwarf mongoose in terms of reproduction, because we were talking about banded mongoose reproduction. They don't necessarily have just one female that does reproduce. Okay, we're going to go off in search of, well, actually anything that we can find out here. Let's go across to Tristan, who's got a far more solid goal in mind.
Well, we've got something quite interesting, which is really cool. This is the first signs of a leopard that we've had in a few days now. So we've got tracks for a female leopard, which can only be Tundi given where we are. We're right up near Cheetah Cut Line in the northeastern corner. And so I'm pretty sure the tracks that I've got on my right-hand side are for her. So you can see that there is tracks coming up the road over there. They're not very clear tracks. They're quite faint and difficult to see, but it is most definitely a female leopard that has crossed the road there. So she's come across and she's then headed into this bush area, and she's heading southwards, kind of parallel with Drakensberg and Cheetah Cut Line. Now, of course, she could have crossed into Torchwood. It's possible, but let's try and see if maybe we get lucky and we can find her somewhere here. She apparently was seen very briefly this morning, so whether or not she actually came this direction and then was seen briefly going back towards Torchwood, or if she's come in here, killed something, and maybe now she's on her way to go and fetch Tamba, I don't know. But we're going to try our very best and just check around here very nicely and see if we can't find a little spotted cat lurking around. The thing is it's really tough to see tracks at the moment. I'm really struggling to be able to see them from here, and it was only because I just turned off the road slightly that we noticed them. It was not really even any skill involved. It was a bit of luck that I just turned in the exact right place and saw her tracks right there. So hopefully she's sitting somewhere over here. Francis from Israel, you say leopard whisperer is back. Well, I'm not quite sure. We haven't had that much luck yet, and I drove the other morning with very little sign of them, so we'll try our best. At least we've got tracks. Tracks is something that we can work with and something that we can hopefully find. The problem is where we are. We're right up against Cheetah Cut Line, and those tracks are angling towards Cheetah Cut Line. But the good news is that I spoke to somebody who's just come up Cheetah Cut Line. They said they didn't see any tracks. Of course, they could have missed them, but they said they didn't see anything. So what I'm hoping is she just walked parallel, and she's then going to come back onto Drakensberg Road and carry on, and maybe she's going to head in the same direction as what we had her a few days ago, because a few days ago she walked this exact route and she went down towards Batalia and towards the Mulawati, and so I'm hoping that she's on a similar sort of path. And that's why I'm driving slightly off the road, is just to be able to check in this nice soft white substrate that we've got in front of us. These kind of places are the best places to check for tracks. They've got soft sandy soils, and any animal that's walked on that stuff is going to sort of leave quite a telltale sign. So it's always a good place to drive slowly, and often when you've got nice space on either side of the road, it's just good to put your your right wheel in the middle and drive slowly so that you can check the right hand side to see if there's any sign of her cutting over. Now, what is interesting with her tracks from back there is she didn't walk on the road. She then went straight over and just crossed and went into the thicket. So she's a leopard that's just quite difficult to track because she doesn't walk on the road for long periods. Now, Kathy, you're wondering if a leopard has something similar to a human fingerprint in that every single track is unique. Well, there will be certain little differences in them. It's very difficult for us to see them though on sand. It depends on the substrate and depends on how noticeable that difference is. There are some leopards that will have little nicks or or little scars that will show up in a track itself, but for the most part it's almost impossible to know exactly who it is. The reason why we surmise and we say who it could be is we generally use the areas that we're in. So we're in a situation where we're here around sort of an area where Thandi spends most of her time, so it would make sense that she would be seen in this area. It's also a small leopard footprint, and we know Thandi and Shadow, both of them are quite small individuals, so that's who I would think it is. I might be completely wrong. It might be a different female altogether, but I would imagine that it's her, and given that she was seen in this particular section this morning briefly, would indicate that it must be her. Now, of course, somebody might have not identified her correctly, but I doubt that they wouldn't have got her right, and in this area we very unlikely that Shadow would be all the way up here, and that's the only two leopards that you would be able to confuse. Just slowly checking along. I don't think she would have come this far south. Obviously, like I say, could be completely wrong, and she might have. And I wonder if maybe that track that I saw down near the Mulawati could be from her cutting back in that direction. I just want to carry on a little bit and go back towards Chitwa cut line, go north up the cut line, and see if I can find any sign of her coming out anywhere in those general areas. If there's nothing there, then we'll go back to those last tracks and just have a little walk around. Maybe she's just sitting down in the grass somewhere and she's right there and we just missed her. It's often what happens with leopards is you drive along and you see their tracks, and then you go around and you do these loops and you don't find anything, and then if you actually just walk on the tracks, the leopard's lying right there. So that'll be our next sort of bet, is if we get nothing on this side and nothing coming out, then that's where we're going to head. But it's interesting to see how her sort of movement pattern has changed quite a bit. When I first arrived here, very seldom would we see Thandi further north of Leadwood, and she used to just kind of sneak in a little bit and out again. And in fact, the first drive I ever did, Karula was right down in this area and was kind of on a kill down near the Chitwa boundary, and it seems as though Thandi is now pushing in quite a lot. And the fact that she's moving around in this section a lot of the time and just kind of patrolling is a good sign, because if she is pregnant like we think she might be, then it's going to be good to be able to have her in this general vicinity. Now, there's a mud wallow on my left hand side that I was just quickly checking just to see if there's any little pug marks from them drinking, but I don't see any sign of anything. Vil, did you see anything? No, you didn't see a leopard, but you did see some other predator sitting in a tree. Now, it would have been very exciting if Vildi had pointed out a leopard, but he has pointed out one of our favorite birds that we get out here, and that is the Bateleur eagles. So there are 3 of them sitting up there at the moment. Now, there's the female on the right-hand side, male to the left, and then the one at the far left, I can't actually tell what it is at this stage, but it looks like it has a dark wing edge, which would potentially mean it's another male that is sitting together with those 2. And the Bateleurs hang around in this area all the time. We see them regularly in this section. There's actually a nest for Bateleurs not too far away, and so we see them all the time in this particular area. Now, with this cloud cover that we've got today, it's grey, it's overcast, it's cool, it's not great for flying, so I would imagine we'll see quite a number of birds of prey down on the trees themselves. It's not the best conditions to be in the air and riding thermals and spotting prey items, and so it's not unexpected to see these 3 like this in weather like we have this afternoon. You can see there's a bit of a breeze blowing, which I suppose would help a little bit with flight, but given that it's quite cool, there's not too many thermals that will be rising at the moment. But they are some of the most beautiful birds that we have out here for sure, and not very common to see all 3 adult plumage individuals together like that. It's something that we only see every now and then, so very, very nice to see. We're going to just carry on and just try and close out this block while we've got these tracks, just in case Thandi has been somewhere in this general vicinity, and while we've kind of got good light, because the light's going to fade quite quickly tonight, so I want to try my very best just to quickly check this all out and make 100% sure. Now, the evidence of Bateleur eagles, if there was other eagles around, the tawny eagles and maybe some vultures, would be evidence of food and a carcass, but just Bateleur eagles like that is pretty indicative of them just spending time in this area, and so it'll be just adults that are here. It's not a sign of any carcass, so to speak. Would be nice though if it was. It would be good if Thandi was on a kill. That would make our life a lot easier than having to try and track her down. Now, lots of tracks for antelope, who don't seem to be moving around too much, so there's no antelope that have been running or anything like that, which is also a good thing to look for. So often if you see antelope tracks, just see if there's any that have been running, because that often can give away a predator's position as well. Right, well, I'm going to forge forward and see if I can find more signs of where Tundi may have gone, and while I do that, let's go across to Jamie, who I think is bumbling about much the same as I am.
I hope that Tristan manages to catch up with Tundi. I miss her. She was definitely high up there on my favorites list. I really enjoyed every single moment that I spent with Tundi. Not that I didn't with the other leopards, of course, but there is something about Tundi that I really, really enjoyed. Oh, look at the little one. Tiny, tiny little Topi cantering next to Mum. So as I've mentioned earlier, we're looking for the sausage tree pride, but at the same time, this is the area that Brent, and only Brent, I think, saw those tiny, tiny little cheetah cubs. And every single day, one of us has moved around this area to see if she's still around. Oh, little one. Hey, you got a one-horned mum. You do have a one-horned mum. Unicorn mum. That's got to be special in Topi terms. Really enjoying all the brand new Topis. They're also so full of energy. Often they gallop and skip about. It's just purely celebrating the joy of life and the rain and all that it entails. Such innocent little things. It's amazing also to see, just like something like a roan or a gemsbok, how they're born. I mean, they're very, very similar in colouring, the same as the Coke's hartebeest. In fact, I think if you put a Coke's hartebeest, look at its little skip. No, don't go that way, you silly thing. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Look at its clearance. It's amazing. I was about to say, I think if you put a Coke's hartebeest baby and a Topi calf next to each other, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference at this point. They are identical. It'll be interesting to see when the colour comes in and they start to put their pants on, as per Viam. It's just like the high spring trot. Of course, they have to be, given the life that they lead and the number of dangers out here. It pays to be fit and strong and healthy, especially when Mum strides off. You have to keep up with it. Somewhat ominous rumbling of thunder that I think is going to mean we get to test these rain covers after all. Sweet. Off you go, little one, to the great vast open space of Kenya. It looks so tiny, dwarfed by the landscape and the massive clouds that are building up over our heads. And somebody's singing. James, very good question. Just hold that thought. I'm just going to go past these people, which I'm going to have to do past this puddle. Oh, shame. You don't have to worry. Don't worry, mister. I'll go off here. Jambo! So, James, the Masai Mara, if I'm not mistaken, I think we have access to around about 160,000 hectares of the Masai Mara. It's divided up into the triangle, which is where we are at the moment. So, let's sort of do a little bit of a stop and look. It's going to be difficult for me to explain it. But the Mara Triangle and the Mara National Reserve, which is on the other side of the river, we have access to both of those places. And it stretches all the way to Tanzania at Ngirare, which is off to my right past the escarpment. And in that sort of general direction is the Ngirare border post and ranger station. And there's a massive fig tree there. And it extends in a sort of a line just past those hills that you can sort of see in the distance. Past those little hills, There, the boundary's on the other side of that, and it extends all the way down, now past that ridge that is sort of in our way. So there's a big ridge over onto Burungat Bridge, which is across the Mara River. It's the only crossing point unless you go outside of the reserve. That over there is Serena that we're looking at. It's on the other side of Serena, down to Tanzania where those mountains are over there. And then across all the way to Sekanani, and then up towards Talek, Musiara, and then out. But the interesting thing about the Mara, and one thing that I'm still, because there's our baby Toby again, one thing that I'm sort of still wrapping my mind around is the fact that you have the Triangle and the National Reserve, and then outside of that there are also enormous conservancies. So there's Nabosho and there's Mara North Conservancy. We do not have Travos agreements there, so we don't go there. The Chitwa boys spend a lot of time in the conservancies as well, the Five Musketeers. And there's essentially conservancies all around that side of things, and then up that way. And that, of course, is conservancies. The land is owned by the community, and all the park fees and everything like that then go and are shared amongst the traditional owners of the land. Some of the conservancies, I confess, I can't say the name to. Olaro Larok, something like that. I can never say it. But that is essentially, we've got the Triangle and the National Reserve. I'll bring a map. Tell you what, I'll bring a map on the next safari. Okay, now, it's just been Tristan and myself, and I mentioned that Scott was in the sort of final processes of organising Miller's rain covers. He's out, and he would love to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on board. I'm a bit late, sorry about that, but I'm very, very happy to be out in the newly renovated rain covers that we've been working on tirelessly so that we can be out here in some testing conditions, yet still show you some incredible action and scenery, and just to see the rain falling down. It's something we haven't really mastered just yet, but I'm hoping these modifications are going to allow us to show you what the animals get up to when it's pelting down. So that's why I'm a bit late. I'm teamed up with Seb this afternoon on camera. For those of you who have never met me before, my name is Scott, and I'm not exactly sure what we are going to do yet. We are still on our driveway down to work. So basically, when we get to the next T-junction, we will decide whether to go left or right. And I'm feeling a little bit under pressure because it is my first safari with Seb on camera, so I'm feeling under pressure to provide him with some good content. He says I'll be fine, but I'm under pressure to provide him with some wonderful content in which to film and share with you guys. So I'm not too sure what I'm going to do. I'm still not entirely sure what Jamie what area she has headed into, nor what is wrong with Taylor's vehicle. Shame, poor old Taylor, but happy that you are at least a little bit underway on the safari with both Jamie and Tristan down in South Africa. Very good. Well, I've just spotted some elephants off the distance, so I think that's going to be in aid of making our first decision. So we will turn right at the T-junction and head off towards those elephants. It is, for now, a beautiful, beautiful evening, as you can see, but there are some dark, ominous clouds looming off in that direction, and that is often where the bad rain comes from. So we could be in luck and get to try out our new rain covers a little bit later. And we've got two side windows that we can zip down, so even if it's really pelting down, if we position the vehicle with the wind in the right direction, we can film through one of these little kind of peepholes. And we're completely watertight now, so we don't have to fear that we are going to get the very important equipment that helps piece this puzzle together to get all the way to you guys all over the world. We don't want to get that stuff damaged, so we are set and ready for whatever Mother Nature throws at us. Now we begin work. Okay, I'm just going to stop up ahead here. We'll be a minute until we are in a prime position to film a small herd of elephants. So that is something to look forward to, and the light is just becoming absolutely beautiful. We are in for a magical sunset, unless of course the storm behind us rolls in before the sun has a chance to set. Almost there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down into these little low-lying drains to get us as eye level as possible with these Goliaths. There we go. Beautiful. A small little herd. I'm not sure if that was a young bull. It could have been. That's definitely a mother. When you look at them on their side profile, like we've got the view now, you'll notice that their forehead is quite a steep kind of 90-degree angle. Thanks, Sabi. Just zoomed into the action there. And you can see she's got a little kink on the top of her forehead where her head begins to flatten out. Now, a bull elephant would have a much more rounded forehead, or at least top of the head. You can also see her mammary glands just behind her front legs. There we go. She's nibbling on some small bushes. It seems to be the flavor at the moment. They're not feeding on the grass so much. Most of that's been eaten by the wildebeest and or dried up. So a lot of the grass that you can see here now isn't the tastiest. So what they're doing is looking for small shrubs that have germinated. And that, I think, is what they're mainly seeking out. That's when they're down in the plains during the day. They often do head up into the escarpment, the Olololo escarpment, which is where that storm is brewing, off to the west where the setting sun is. And oh, what are those? Some more elephants in the background. So another herd, and all of them are slowly making their way up the hill where they can feed on kind of some riparian vegetation along the little rivers that flow down into the Mara Basin. Wonderful. Well, we're going to continue moseying along. I'm going to try and find us some lions, and while we do that, we are going to send you to something very cute, hyper, active, and it is running around, I hope.
Well, it's not the predator that we were looking for, Scotty, and yes, they are cute and very hyperactive. At the moment, they're all huddled together, just watching us and checking us out and having a little look around, but they are seriously cute little things, and this must be some of the tamest mongoose that I've seen. They are no more than... And those ones there are a little further away, but there's some that are sitting probably, I would say, you see this one right here, just where the log is? Oh, he's just ducked his head behind, but there's one that's sitting over there, and they are super, super chilled. So I don't know, that one's got grass seeds, or what have you done? Obviously went down a burrow that hasn't been used in a while, and there was a spider web or something, because it is now covered in web and seeds and all kinds of other things. You silly little thing, you're going to have to groom yourself, you're very dirty. And then there is another little one that is, I would say, probably no more than 1.5 meters away from us, and is just watching us over the top. How cool is that? That is about as close as you're ever going to get to a dwarf mongoose. And look at those little beady eyes that are watching us, and the tiny little nose that is sniffing. And you can see that their biggest organ or sense that they're going to have is the sense of hearing. So they've got those quite round big ears in relation to the size of the eyes and the nose. And so hearing and sense of sight are the two things that they rely on the most. But that is so cool to see, and I can't believe how chilled they are. And they're getting more and more relaxed. The longer we're sitting here, the more they're starting to come out and just watch around, and no longer actually watch us, but watch everything else that's going on. There's a squirrel that's been alarm calling, so they've been looking in that direction. Sinak, you're asking if these animals will attack animals bigger than them. Yes, so I've seen them attack bigger snakes than what they are. So snakes that are slightly larger than their size that they are, they'll use each other to be able to attack and go after them. I've never seen them really go after anything else, any other predators, so they won't use the size of the grouping to go and chase other predators away. Unfortunately, all the other predators we get out here are big enough and strong enough to take them and to even push them off if there is a group of them. So not in that sense, but they will be able to go after quite large prey items by using each other to then hunt them. So you'll find that they'll all go and bite, and things like scorpions, big scorpions, snakes, they will help one another. Are you curious, little one? This one by the log here is my favorite. Those two that are grooming are cool, but this little one is like climbing the log almost to look at us. Hello, what are you doing? I love how they move as well. There's no sort of shortage of energy. They look like Taylor after a few Red Bulls in that they twitch all over the place and are very busy little creatures. They are super cool to watch, and I'm absolutely fascinated at why these are so relaxed. Now, we're not near a dam or anything where they could have been habituated to people, so I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just a group that, because their holes are right next to the road, they've had so many vehicles coming past that have stopped, that they've just gotten used to the fact that people are not dangerous. And it really is quite amazing how relaxed they are given the proximity that we are to them. Romit, you're wondering if a mongoose is related to a meerkat. Well, they are part of the same family, yes. So they're not direct exactly the same animal, but they are in the same family. So they are related, yes. It's basically like cheetah and leopards, if you want to call it, that similar kind of relation as to what those would be. So they're not exactly the same, but they are in the same family and same order in terms of the classifications. But you can see how much they like to groom one another, and that's vitally important for the lifestyle of a dwarf mongoose, because dwarf mongoose are animals that need to groom one another in order to establish a ranking and a hierarchy. When you find that there is an individual, the alpha male or alpha female, that has potentially died, then you'll find that these guys will not fight with one another and try and take over by means of asserting themselves with strength, but they will do it via grooming. And so what happens is they have a grooming competition, and each one will groom the other one, and eventually one just fatigues from dehydration and loss of moisture, and you end up with a situation where it will give up and the other one is the victor. And when they're finished, it looks as though they've been dunked in a bucket of water, because they've literally groomed each other so much and used so much saliva that they're all kind of wet. But this is so cool. We'll very seldom get close-ups like this of dwarf mongoose. It is as close as we're ever going to get to these little guys, and they're absolutely fascinating little things to see. Right. Well, we're going to sit with our tiny little carnivores probably a little bit longer, because they really are fascinating little animals and they are highly entertaining. But while we sit with these tiny little creatures, let's go to Scotty Dyson, who's got something much, much, much larger than them.
Yes, we do indeed, but I am so happy that Tristan has managed to find what sounds like a very relaxed group of mongoose that are showing you a wonderful time. They're such interesting little critters, as are these elephants, who have got a much different hierarchical structure than the mongooses that you're chatting about with Tristan. The ladies are in charge within these herds, and that means it's a matriarchal system. And who knows, maybe this is the oldest, wisest lady who decides where the herd goes and what the herd does. The men have got nothing to do with the ladies and just come and go as and when the ladies require their services. I've only been lucky enough to see that once, and wouldn't that be something wonderful to be able to share with you guys? Elephants mating is seriously a sight to behold. Now, earlier I said she did seem to be enjoying the bushes at the moment, and here we can see she continues to feed on this little bush, or a different bush at least. And it'll only maybe be after the November rains, or even though the rains have started now, we expect the majority of them to fall in November, that they'll probably start consuming the fresh, tasty green grass. I'm told that is their favorite food of choice, if they have a choice. But they don't, and they mix up their diets and are very fussy animals. That's one thing that I've really loved watching about elephants, is that at certain times of the year they'll feed on certain things, and at other times of the year for months on end, for maybe maybe 7 or 8 months of the year, they won't even touch this bush. But now the flavor is in fashion. What I'm also looking forward to them doing is shaking these date trees, which are the predominant tree that you see in the background. I only saw them shaking the fruits off them once as we arrived, and was hoping we were going to see more of that, but we obviously arrived as the fruits season came to an end, or at least I arrived about 3 months ago, coming on 4. There's some zebra in the background, and again, I just can't stress enough how lucky we are to be traversing this African wilderness, because it certainly is one of the most exquisite that you can be in, and the long-range views and the 2 shots that we've been lucky enough to share with you over the last few months have been quite extraordinary. The zebra, unlike the elephants, won't be feeding on any of the bushes. They'll still be feeding on the grass. They like the short root, short grass. And they're busy making their way through that. Hello, Graham. You would like to know about the tusks on these elephants, and if any of these females would be considered to have large ivory. And no, all of these ladies have got fairly mediocre ivory, and if you tune into more safaris, we'll definitely be able to show you some bigger cows. I've noticed a lot of the cows up here in the Mara do have quite beautiful tusks, some very big tusks, not nearly as thick as the big elephant bulls, but certainly quite long. There was one female in specific whose tusks kind of crossed over right on the end, which was quite unique. So her trunk was kind of semi-stuck between her 2 tusks that grew over one another. They weren't the biggest, but it was an impressive display. Haven't seen any big bulls yet here in the Mara. There's definitely certain parts of Kenya where you do get a lot of big bulls, in and around the Chulu Hills, Savo and Amboseli. There's a kind of 3 ecosystems that are all interlinked with a highway between 2 of them, between Amboseli and Chulu Hills, the main road and railway between the main port, Mombasa, and the capital, Nairobi. So that's obviously something quite interesting. You can be driving along the main highway and see hyenas snacking on roadkill. So that is still one of the realities out here in Kenya.
What is he saying?
Who's it from?
Sinak.
Hello, Sinak. Sorry, Seb was just helping me with the question there. I'm having problems with my earpiece in this vehicle. I'm not usually in this vehicle, and all of our equipment tends to function slightly differently when we hop into other vehicles for some reason. So, Sinak, you'd like to know how old are these elephants, or at least, one of the big ones. I would say the biggest cows within this herd, I wouldn't put any of them as being very old ladies. So, in their 40s, early 40s. An older lady would be late 50s. They tend to live to around 60 years, so I'm told. I've never followed the life of an elephant from start to finish, but that is the average age. Of course, it'll vary greatly. But you definitely can see old elephants that are, generally bracket between 50 and 60 years of age. They've got very distinctive features and characteristics on their head. Their temporal dents are quite sunken in, and their skin looks a little bit saggy. So these are all quite young. Like I say, I'd put her in her kind of prime and in and around 40, but it's a complete thumbsuck, and I could be way off. Let's go to one of the small ones so I can have a little thumbsuck at that, just to give you a comparison, because they don't grow very quickly. That's perfect. So I'd guess that one to be about 4 or 5 years of age. Yet it's still very small and cute. As it gets closer to the mother, it helps with the size reference. Now, I think I gave it one or two many years there, maybe 3 or 4 years of age, just to give you a kind of comparison to work off. Thank you for your question, Sumac. We are now going to send you back to Tristan, who is still with that cute family of mongoose.
We are indeed, because they're proving to be very difficult to leave. They are super cute, and there's lots of grooming going on, and we were just actually having a look at two of them as they were grooming, and one of them had its lip curled back, and you could actually see the teeth. And if you were wondering as to why these things can be so ferocious as little predators, the teeth are insane. They've got these sharp, pointy teeth, almost something like you would see in one of the wild dog's mouths, but it is amazing to actually see how sharp and sort of big their canines are, and their little teeth that are inside there as well. So it's been really cool just to watch them, and you can see how they go about their grooming. There's a lot of eagerness about keeping each other clean, and they've now, I think, getting a bit bored of us and starting to meander off and to go and start foraging. And it just shows you how comfortable they are. If they're moving around like this and are starting to go and forage, it means they've been completely relaxed with our presence, and for them we are no longer a threat whatsoever. So they're going around now doing their last bit of scavenging before the night time comes and things become a little bit difficult for them. Obviously when it gets dark they don't spend much time out and about because there's too many big predators. Now that one seems as though it's got a bit of a funny tail. If you look there, it seems like the tip of the tail is a bit odd and maybe a bit broken. It's maybe had a little attack on its tail. Shame. Your tail doesn't look quite right compared to the others. It looks as though there's a bit of a kink in it. Aubrey, you're asking if I think mongoose could ever get sunburnt. No, I don't think so. They're covered in quite a thick fur coat, if you have a look at that. And remember that these guys are animals that will spend quite a large majority of their time ducking and diving for cover. And so even though they spend time outside, they have enough fur to be able to protect that skin, to keep the sun off it and not for them to get burnt. And also they are animals that will, like I say, go underground quite a lot of the time. You see every time something disturbs them, they're under and are going and sort of seeking shelter. I thought I saw one that had a little meal there, but it's now finished it already. I was hoping that it had got itself a scorpion or something, because when they get something like that, it's often fun to watch them because they have dismembered the scorpion or this food source, and as they go about eating it. But whatever it got, it must have been quite small, as it just went under and into the gullet as quick as possible. And there the rest are all foraging and bouncing around as mongoose do. So, Sinak, the grooming process is a way of socializing and strengthening bonds within this small grouping. So it's much like lions. You'll find them often grooming. Leopard and their cubs do the same thing. So it's establishing social bonds and strengthening those bonds. It also serves to keep them clean. Remember, they're little animals that are running around in the grass. So there's ticks, there's parasites, and that means that these guys have got to clean themselves regularly to get rid of all of these parasites that sit on their skin. So they have a situation where they have to kind of keep themselves clean. They have to make sure that they are constantly grooming, getting rid of any fur that's been dislodged or any of those parasites that have gotten onto their fur. But on the side note of that, it will also strengthen the bond between the grouping and make sure that they're all very tightly knit as a sort of clan or business of mongoose, is what the collective noun is called. And so you'll find them moving around quite a bit together, and then as soon as they've groomed like this, if there's an alarm call or something like that, they can then trust each other and be able to get away and stay safe, as well as protect one another if there is a situation where they have to. So it's a good process to go under, just to establish the bonds and to make sure that everybody recognizes one another when out foraging and coming back together. That is an extra fluffy dwarf mongoose though. Look how cute that is. It's about as cute as it gets. They look like tiny little bears when they sit like this all fluffed up. And it is, like I say, probably one of the best dwarf mongoose sightings I've ever had. There's one now that's on its back, getting its belly groomed. Oh no, it flopped forward now. No very small ones in this little grouping. Sometimes you get tiny little babies that come out and will be with the rest of them, and you'll even find sometimes you'll see mothers carrying their little pups from hole to hole. But it seems as though these guys are all fairly big, and most of them are adults and sub-adults. And isn't it cool when they all come together and they have a little game? There's those teeth that I was talking about on that middle individual. Not that they sit still for long enough to actually see them, but how cool is this? It's no wonder they're called a business as well. They never sit still at all. So Chantal, who's in the Masai Mara in the final control over there, she says she really misses these dwarf mongoose. They are very cute, and we're very fortunate that we've got a number of quite relaxed groupings here on Djuma that allows us these amazing moments. I know Jamie's had some crazy sightings of them jumping up on one another and fighting and wrestling and carrying on, and then we've got sightings like this where they're just such a close proximity and we're getting to see them grooming and playing and moving around. It's a very special thing to see, and it's also an animal that we don't generally spend a very long period of time with because they're normally quite shy and reclusive, and they see us and they scuttle off and they try and get their distance. And so to have a grouping like this that is allowing us such a close view is a very special thing. So I can understand why Chantal does miss them, although up in the Mara they do get the banded mongoose, I think, so they must see a few of them every now and then. I think Ms. Lou was telling me that there are mongoose around camp, so I'm sure that they do get their mongoose fix up that side of the world as well. Right, now we have been distracted with our smallest predators for quite some time, so I think what we're going to do is now leave them, let them carry on, and we're going to try and see if we can carry on our search for Tundi, because we've come to an abrupt halt as I was coming up to Quarry Pan and I was coming to check this side of the world to see if maybe Tundi had come back this side, but we didn't find any tracks of her crossing out towards Torchwood, so I think she's somewhere here. We've just got to try and find her. The problem is where she's gone is really not a great place at all. It is thick, it is dense, there's gullies. You can see what we're talking about. This is the section that she might have gone into, is this thicket, and there's undulating terrain, and it really is not ideal for any sort of person to be negotiating with a vehicle, even on foot. It's quite dense inside there. So we're going to try to see if we can't find some sort of sign of something in this general vicinity, and while we do that, let's go across to Jamie, who I think is in the same position, just bumbling around trying to find anything that she can.
That is exactly what I'm doing, and thinking a little bit about the amazing dwarf mongoose sightings that I've had in the past. And one in particular comes to mind with tiny, tiny little babies. And it was during a closed rehearsal, so we were prepping for a TV show, and I think it was a December TV show, one that we did last year, December. And we had, VM and I had the most amazing sighting. We had these gorgeous little tiny, tiny baby dwarf mongoose, and they were out playing and climbing on the adults, and it was so special. And it was such an exercise of trust, because Kirsty obviously was directing, and she can see everything that's happening on the other vehicles, and she didn't refuse to come to us, but she just had other stories and segments to complete first. And I was sitting on my hands to stop myself from grabbing the radio to call her, because I knew she'd seen it. And I had to just sort of sit there and hold my tongue, because when our directors are directing a TV show, they've got feeds coming from every angle, noise, us talking, them talking to us, feeding each and every single individual person an update of what the other person's doing, so that we've got a little bit of continuity. So I know that to add to that amount of noise isn't helpful at all. Oh, I hate this road. I always want to pull over on the side, but then it ends up tilting us right down. We've got a lovely herd of elephants. The light it's not as stunning as it was a few minutes ago, but it really is beautiful. I went looking for the cheetah. Unfortunately, we didn't have signal, and I didn't linger too long to try and see if we could find her. Right. Well, Scott, of course, has spent his afternoon with elephants. He's moved on from the elephants and apparently has found a relatively rare bird.
We have indeed. We found an endangered bird. We're just reversing a little bit to get you the best lighting possible and a nice low angle, and also to make sure that they don't disappear out of frame. Just going to try and level the vehicle a bit here for old Seb. There we go. That's about right, I think. Beautiful. So we thought we'd tag along these two ladies' evening stroll. Look at all those insects. That'll be a result of all the recent rain. And that's what she is looking for, and she just found one. How cool is that? Well, we got lucky. Always wonderful to show you animals going about doing their business, and acquiring food for predators is certainly one of the most exciting things for me to view. It doesn't matter what predatory animal it is. It could be a little gecko hunting moths around one of the lights in the kitchen, or one of these ladies strolling through the plains looking for obviously bigger insects than the ones we can see flying around. I'm not sure what the last one she got was. Now I know she's a lady as well as her partner who's not too far away, because there's a blue throat patch in and amongst that big, there's the other one, there we go, there you can see that dark patch between the big red gular flap or pouch that she's clearly kind of inflating at the moment. You can see the sun glowing due to the backlighting, and I would be surprised if there isn't a male around. So now I'm scanning about. I can't see one. Maybe there is one nearby. They usually travel around in small family flocks. Now the reason why Jamie said these birds are rare, it's because they are endangered, and that's mainly because their nesting habitat is sadly often used for barbecues or building houses. So they like to nest in cavities of dead trees. So if trees are getting chopped down before they can die naturally and then have these natural cavities within them for these birds to nest, it becomes a bit of a problem. So they're very specific with what nest they need. Obviously they're quite big birds. I would say 4 times the size of your average chicken. Not quite as big as a turkey. And they also reproduce very slowly, so they don't give birth to young every year. Not give birth, of course, it would be quite strange for a bird to give birth. They only lay their eggs every couple of years once they've sufficiently raised their youngsters, who obviously are quite dependent on them. I don't know what that one's found there. It almost seems like it's digging something out with its beak. What are you doing? It would certainly look like you can see a little bit of soil on the end of its beak there. Ah, not anymore. Beautiful. Hi Paula, you would like to know how many of these birds we could expect to see in the entire range of the Masai Mara, and it's a very good question to which I have absolutely zero clue. I wonder, there may be some ground hornbill researchers out here that frequent these parts. There's no guarantees though. So I'm not too sure. We should actually start trying to keep track and log sightings ourselves. We've just been trying to find our feet really the last few months. It's been fairly chaotic. But we could and should start, tracking different flocks and say, if we found these 2 females today and we see 2 females again in this general area, we could assume they're the same 2. And the same goes for bigger flocks. So that's something that we should possibly initiate, or maybe you, if you would like to, can start initiating that. You can become the head of the Safari Live Ground Bull Forum. So let us know if you'd like that position. It's up for grabs. We may just be able to sneak 1 or 2 more views before they disappear into an area where we may have to reposition. Now they can hunt quite big prey, small rodents, frogs, little snakes. Oh, she's coming in at a good angle now. We might get to see her eyelashes light up. They've got quite long eyelashes, these birds. And don't they have very fancy makeup? Bright red, I guess not lipstick, but eye stick and chin stick. It would be a bit much if their red beak was also red. Although it'd be interesting sight to behold. Maybe we can convince one to paint its bull red one day around Christmas. Maybe it will be applicable. Very, very good. Well, it's turning into a beautiful, beautiful evening. Not that it wasn't when we started off, but the sun is beginning to slowly dip behind one large cumulonimbus cloud and we can expect some beautiful colors out from the west in the next 15 minutes to half an hour. But it's time to start thinking about saying goodbye to the sun and putting on a few extra layers. It does cool down quite a lot once the sun has gone down, although it must be said that it is definitely warming up as we head into the Kenyan summer. We are just south of the equator here, probably 200 miles, maybe 300 miles south of the equator here, but it does mean we are heading in towards our summer months, slightly warmer than the winter months, but not a huge change because we are on the equator. But I've definitely noticed things warming up, which is a pleasant change because we had some bitterly cold nights out here, and it's definitely a lot easier to be out when it's a bit cooler. Very, very good. Well, I intend to prosper forth now in the hopes of finding Seb a serval hunting birds, ideally leaping high into the sky and snatching them out of a tree. That'll be something quite nice. He hasn't seen a serval yet. He's seen all the other cats, just about the main ones, but not serval yet. So we are going to send you off to one of our other intrepid adventurers, and hopefully they have something exciting or interesting to show or tell you. Enjoy.
We do indeed have something interesting to show you, and in fact we'll have a lovely sunset combined with something else. Oh, I don't know. That sunset might turn out to be a non-event. That cloud... There'll be colour somewhere, says Ferg. That cloud is pretty enormous, bringing with it a great deal of rain. So we found something. We found something underneath this shepherd's tree, and I'm sort of hoping that he's not alone, but he appears to be. We have found a lion. Is it just the one? Oh, termite mound, hold on. Oh, not so bad, termite mound. Hello, boy. Ferg would like the sunset behind you. We have... Happy? Here we go. We have found a very sleepy lion who is absolutely covered in flies. Now this would be probably, although we're on the boundary here, this would probably be one of the Chitwa boys. There's 4 of them. I've seen this particular male with the sausage tree pride before. That being said, I've never seen the other 3 in this direction. I think it's him. I actually can't tell. Obviously, all I can see of him is his chin and his body, which, as you can see, has collected all of the flies in the Northern Triangle. Oh! I don't know how that doesn't drive him mad. Obviously, the animals here are used to it. A lot of the time you see the sort of reflexes of their skin twitching in response to the flies crawling on them. But he doesn't seem at all bothered. I was really hoping the rest of the sausages would be here with him as well. They might still be in this vicinity. It might not be far. Maybe we'll get lucky. With a little bit of patience, if we sit with him, I'm also hoping that he might roar for us. It's been raining a great deal, so all of his scent markings will have been washed away, which is why usually after the rain you'll see the dominant animals are at their most active. How's that storm? It is spectacular looking. The whole sky is really utterly stunning, apart from that one tiny flap. Apologies. Look at that. Shepherd's tree, storm in the background, rain cover flap in the way. The lovely thing, of course, is that at no point is the scenery in the Mara ever the same. As the clouds move across the landscape, it's always different. Little subtleties of light changes. Now, Randy, you would like to know how people from all over the world can help with the conservation of these lions that we get to sit with all day. There's quite a few things that you can do, one of which is spread awareness. It's one of the most important things. Educating oneself about the challenges that face lions in terms of interaction with human beings, and the conflict between predators and human beings is a really big one. And understanding those sorts of things and spreading that awareness, and also spreading an awareness of what kind of tourism is actually helpful to the protection of the species. Because people paying to come and see these lions does help. It brings money into a country that otherwise the people would have to earn their money in a different way. You know, a lodge has housekeepers, it has people who work behind the scenes in the kitchen, wherever they happen to be. It provides a huge number of jobs, which in turn means that people don't have to turn to something like farming, for example. But those are some of the challenges that face lions. Spreading awareness it's one of my pet peeves in terms of cub petting, because there are so many lies surrounding that particular practice, particularly in South Africa. The idea that if you come and pet a lion cub, you are somehow contributing to their future, which is of course an absolute lie. Avoiding that and spreading awareness of that. And there's lots of different ways you can go about helping lions, but it's all about doing your research beforehand, because there's all sorts of unscrupulous people out there who would be very particular, or would be very keen on taking the money of very well-meaning people such as yourself. So looking towards reputable animal conservation societies and charities is a good start. And awareness, in terms of the conflict that animals face with human beings, that awareness must not come from an arrogant, how do I put this, first world perspective. It should be an awareness of the issues facing the animals and the people that live in the countries where these animals are found. So a little bit of empathy with the desire for conservation is also important. And perhaps without too much sanctimonious, or too much of a sanctimonious approach, because the way forward is going to be in a way that conserves both the animals and helps the people around them. Otherwise there's no conservation and there will be no hope. Hey boy. Lovely. Oh, apparently while we're sitting here chatting about the deeper aspects of animal conservation in Africa, it appears as though we are being spied upon.
Yes, we are spying on Jamie, and I think it's Ferg on camera with her. Hard to tell, they're very, very far away, and we just thought we'd stop and give you an idea of where exactly they are nestled within the Mara ecosystem. And as we zoom out, you get a good idea of how small we are and how vast this massive wilderness is. So that's where Jamie is, and we are a little bit closer to the river, further to the east, and we are going to continue along the river. We saw quite a few vehicles stopped up ahead of us, about 2 or 3 kilometers. I think I can still see one shimmering there actually, at about 11 o'clock, Seb. There we go, a little bit left. Yeah, so there's still a few vehicles buzzing about in that area, but they look like they're heading possibly home. But I think there could have been a predator in that area, or maybe 2 or 3 or more. So we're going to race off there and see if we don't have any luck, and try and work out what it is they saw. There's quite a thick belt of forest. There's quite a thick belt of forest that whatever the people were looking at may have enveloped the animals as they disappeared in towards it. But we may be able to work our way around the other side, or make a plan to see what it was. I'm guessing it was lions. But the joy of being out here is we simply do not know what will happen, when, or how, or with what animal. Ah, well, you have now got the great joy of going to join Tristan to see how his tracking is going. It's something we don't get to do here in the Mara, and it is something I'm looking forward to doing as and when I do get back to Djuma at some point in time. Over to Tristan, the master tracker.
Opposite direction, so she's now walking back again towards Cheetah Cut Line, and these come from a very different area altogether. So it seems that she's been very busy here today. I'll try and turn around and see where these go, if maybe they cut south or if they are the exact same ones that we picked up earlier. But in all fairness, I think she might have gone back to Torchwood, given that her tracks are going in this direction. So I'm going to try and see where they head to, but I have a feeling that she has gone into Torchwood and has gone that side. Unfortunately, Tingana has also crossed off Chitwa into Nkoro and is mobile east at the moment, so he's not even coming our way, which is not good. So now it's just Thandi that we're going to have to try and hope for, and I'm just thinking that maybe what she did is she cut up this way across Central. That's the track I found, and she's actually gone through the block a little bit further towards Gwari Pan side. So I'll check around and see. There's no tracks that I can see, or discernible tracks. It's difficult in front of me where I am now. It is hard. It is really quite difficult to see tracks in these sort of rocky, hard areas like we have now. But the thing is that you never know. It's just a bit of patience and a bit of perseverance, and maybe somewhere on one of these mounds at some point we will get lucky and we will find a track of this female leopard somewhere here. I have a sneaky suspicion that her tracks, like I say, go across, up, and then those are the tracks we find in crossing over going towards Torchwood side, and so that's what I think has happened. I just want to double check as I go along. There's definitely no sign of tracks here. Now, Judy, earlier you were wondering about whether or not Thandi would still be providing opportunities for food for Tamba, and whether she's still going back to him. Judy, I'm not 100% sure. I said earlier that maybe she's got a kill and she might be going back to fetch Tamba. The reason why I say that is because they were seen together a few weeks or days ago on Torchwood. The two of them were together, so Tamba and Thandi in the same place. So whether or not they're actually spending time together anymore, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if she just picks and chooses. We know that some of her carcasses that she's eaten on her own and hasn't taken Tamba to them. So it's difficult to say. I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine that yes, she's probably giving up on him slowly but surely, but maybe there's still this instinct to go and just check up on him and go and find him when she does have food. I'm not sure. I don't know, and only time will tell as we kind of follow her more and see her more. Does she go and fetch Tamba? And if we start to see Tamba's tracks coming back here, then we might know that whether or not she's doing that, but it's very difficult to say at this stage, and we haven't seen them really feeding together for quite some time, so hard to say. Right, I'm going to try one more time in this area, try and just do a couple more loops around, and while I do that, let's go to Jamie, who's got a beautiful multicolored bird.
We've got a beautiful bird, and I suspect, although I'm not 100% certain yet, but I think we've got a beautiful bird and a beautiful bird nest. We've got this lovely lilac-breasted roller, and there is a pair of them. And I think that they've got a nest in a hole in the tree just down and to the right of where that lilac-breasted roller is sitting. So definitely one of the most striking birds that we see here, probably one of the ones that we neglect the most, because we get so used to seeing them that we don't stop nearly as often as we should to appreciate the sheer majesty of their colours. The royal blues, teal, purple. Very attractive little birds. Now they do nest in hollows in trees. This is the perfect spot, a hollow in a shepherd's tree. I'm just waiting patiently to see. Both Mum and Dad are here now, and both Mum and Dad would play a role in raising the chicks and helping to keep them fed. The fact that they're both here means we're not... Oh, hold on. She's going to go off. Or he. I'm not 100% sure. Nice, Fergus! How cool is that? Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Fergus, who's fallen over. Very impressive. Here comes the second one to join it. Well done, Ferg. That was awesome. Very, very impressive. Oh, and one of them caught something along the way. Why didn't you follow that one, Fergus?
Because I was wrapped around the pole.
You were wrapped around the pole. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. That was a full 180 swing. Beautifully done. Perhaps I am mistaken about their nest. But I'll keep watching it, though. Just out of interest's sake. Because I'm pretty sure I heard baby squawking when the mother came in earlier. We're still with our line, by the way. I'm going to see if the patience game pays off. Obviously, he's rolled over now. And that's about as much movement as we've seen from him. Slumbering the afternoon away. Cheeky, you say he's handling all those flies like a true gangster. Absolutely. Do gangsters handle? Do they get covered in flies?
Golden flies.
Golden flies. Oh, I see.
So that whole fly thing is
Pretty pretty fly. Fergus, you're on the ball. Pretty fly for a lion, huh? Anyway, all the girls say he's pretty fly for a male lion. Doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it?
For a feline guy.
For a feline guy, perfect. All the girls say he's pretty fly for a feline guy. That was a strange progression that the thoughts went down. Oh, Fergus takes full credit for that. Right, we're going to sit here patiently with our gangster lion, who's pretty fly, by all accounts, and send you back over to Scott, who I think, if I heard this correctly, has more flies.
He's pretty gangster.
Yes, we are definitely more fly than Jamie. Look at this, although I don't think they are flies. I think they're some kind of a midge, perhaps. Can't be certain. They are tiny, they move very quickly, and there are many of them. So I'm not sure what they are. There are some beautiful clouds in the background, magical evening, and we found 2 more lions who, I'm told, are on some form of a honeymoon affair. We are here with one of the wardens of the park, and he said he has seen these 2 lions make love. Hang on. Oh, it is just 2. And it's the male on the left and the female on the right. Now, what's interesting is we haven't seen them put their heads up just yet or do anything. But for me, at this angle, even though we've got a terrible one, I'm not convinced how big this male is. So we could possibly be seeing a younger, smaller male who's flying below the radar, being a little bit naughty, scooping up this lady. He too is covered in flies like Jamie's lions, and they're very popular amongst the flies, thankfully more popular than we are for most of the time, but we do get our days when we get harassed by them. So I think, oh no, he doesn't actually look too small. He looked like he had a bit of a decent mane there, and he's probably one of 3 males who is dominant in this general area. I'm not sure exactly where their territory begins and finishes. I mean, this could be a guy that's come from further south along the river, up here to this kind of fringe area to where another 3 males spend their time. But there's just so many lions in the mire, and we've been covering so much ground that it's hard to be certain of who exactly is who. But like I say, I think we're going to stick around here. I'm guessing that as the evening slowly comes into the dawn, the dusk, not the dawn, these guys may get a bit more active, and it'll be wonderful to see them mating again. They often mate for 3 to 5 days, so I'm not sure how deep they are into the mating. The fact that they haven't been mating too much possibly means that they are coming towards the end of their whole affair. They tend to reduce the frequency of matings. It can be often as every 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes even more than that when the conditions are appropriate. But we're going to sit here and see how long it takes for them to make love again. goodbye. There goes the Askari. You may have got a glimpse of them. Sikunywema. And they do a good job kind of patrolling sightings and policing sightings just to make sure that there's no off-roading and no people misbehaving. So there's a good presence amongst the what is called Askaris in the local lingo, which basically means park rangers. Well, wonderful. So we worked out what everyone was looking at, so I'm guessing they were all leaving because it was time to head out of the park. We have the great benefits of being able to be out after dark. We are the only people in the entire Masai Mara that have that privilege. So we can all consider ourselves very lucky to be sitting here now alone. And into darkness. If you stay at camps here, you generally have to be back at around sunset. 6:30 is the official gate closing time, but thankfully the guys are fairly lenient and let people get in at around 7-ish. Not sure if I should be saying that, so don't spread the word, or don't tell anyone it was me who told you that. Okay, well, like I say, we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to sit here and wait patiently for these guys to hopefully do their business. And while we do that, we'll be sending you back to Jamie. I wonder if her big cat is still asleep.
No, he's still asleep. He is absolutely still asleep. And unlike Scott's lion, does not have the company of a lady anywhere in his immediate vicinity. Perhaps he's sleeping away his woes. Obviously missed out in the... Oh, lightning. Happy days. Storm progressing beautifully as it rolls across towards us. Definitely not nearly as serious as the last few afternoons. So all that essentially this lion is up to is breathing quietly, and the odd twitch of a tail, and maybe an ear movement every now and again. I'm not sure where Scott is, but it would be interesting to know, because if he's somewhere close to us, which I think he might be, I know he was spying on us earlier, so I suspect he's somewhere down towards the river road. Then it means that these two, this male lion and Scott's male lion, are probably part of the same coalition, given their proximity to each other. It's not often that two vehicles in the Mara are this close to each other. And yes, our male lion's still covered in flies. As Scott says, I'm very glad that they're not as attracted to us as they are to the lions.
We tend to have less blood splatter all over us.
That is true, we do tend to have less blood splatter all over us. He doesn't look that bloody, though. In fact, I'm not sure. I think he's actually quite hungry. I'm not sure, apologies, if it's Lynn or Liz. I didn't quite hear. I think it might have been Lynn. You want to know if the... Yeah, it is Lynn. You want to know if the flies would be biting the lion. Yes, there are certain species of fly that do bite. Stable flies, there are horse flies out here, there are also tsetse flies. Although we don't see many of them in this particular part of the triangle, and I don't see any of them on him. But yes, they do bite, and it's a itchy, burning sensation. Now, I think most of those are not biting him, but a lot of the larger ones are biting flies. So those ones will be sort of collecting all the rubbish on his coat. But there are some that do bite, and it's a hugely uncomfortable sensation. That's, generally speaking, they can't really get through his fur, which is why they tend to go for places like the tips of the ears. You'll often see that lions, that the roundness of their ear is ever so slightly, the outline's ever so slightly broken by little jagged pieces, and that comes from fly bites. And then little infections setting in and eating away just a fraction of the skin before it heals, and it gets scabby, and then they scratch it and it pops off, and it gives the older lions a very, not moth-eaten look, that doesn't quite work, fly-eaten look, I guess, and that combined with their battle scars gives them a very impressive look to their whole demeanor. But yes, some of those flies might be biting. Most of them I don't think are. What is interesting to watch is when a lion sits down either on an ant's nest or if they find themselves near a beehive or a wasp's nest. And then you can see them start to jump and shuffle and scratch and bite, and then they start to snarl. I've seen them do it with bees and with wasps. They start to growl and hiss at the biting or with the stinging insects, which is usually without much effect, I have to say. And the wasps and bees don't find that particularly intimidating. It would be entertaining if we weren't so sympathetic of their plight. I'm sure what this lion is wishing is that perhaps it had found its way underneath a spider's web or something similar. There are plenty of arachnids to keep the flies at bay, and Tristan has found some.
I do have a spider web, and a very interesting and intriguing one at that. This is the spider web for community nest spiders. So there are thousands of tiny spiders that live inside that ball of vegetation and leaves and bits of carapaces from varying beetles and insects and other things that they've spun into there to protect themselves. So you'll find that community nest spiders live like this, and they build these webs in order to try and protect themselves from being picked off by predators. At the end of the day, because they're so small, their venom is not enough to defend themselves by sitting on big webs like things like golden orb webs or other spiders like that. So they have to protect themselves. But what you will notice is a number of beetles. Now, the wind is not playing the game for poor VM and is blowing this web all over the place, so I do apologize. It looks like we're in a boat at the moment. Hopefully the wind will settle. There was no wind just now, and it was quite beautiful to see. Now, the interesting thing about this is those chafer beetles that you see inside there, it was, when was it? 3 nights ago. It was the first night I was back. We were driving along, VM and I, and it was just after that massive storm that we had. And as we were driving under marula trees with our lights on, it was like being snowed upon by thousands of these beetles. Literally, there were hundreds of them as we were getting back to camp. And so those are what has happened after that sort of period. A lot of these beetles have ended up kind of falling and going into webs like this. Now, the thing is, that beetle would be far too big and strong and would overpower these spiders by themselves. But because they live in these communities together, they're able to come, and each one is able to inject venom, and enough venom to then kill those beetles and to be able to liquidize them for them to feed on it. So it's really quite amazing that something of that size is being fed upon by tiny little spiders because they live in a group together. If it was just one spider by itself, there's no ways it would have the venom to be able to overpower a beetle of that size, but because there's lots of them, they are able to do it. It really is quite amazing. Right, we're going to leave one predator and try and see if we can carry on and try and find Tundi. We still haven't found any more signs. I can't find any sign of her crossing into Torchwood anywhere, so she must have done a movement where she's changed direction and gone somewhere else, because I can't find her anywhere. But I believe Scott's lions are doing something, so let's quickly jump across to him.
Well, there we go. Well, just in time. You got there midway through the act. I just didn't want to start chattering as they were doing their business. It would have been a bit rude of me, I thought. As you can see, he is an absolute brute, so I completely misjudged how impressive he is. Beautiful male lion. And it's a very short affair, lions copulating. And judging by the fact that it was quite a placid, relaxed affair, it indicates to me that they are towards the end of their mating. So at the end to kind of 3 to 5 day period where they will be doing lots and lots of mating. Initially, because it's painful for both of them, it can be quite a ferocious affair. Lots of growling and snarling, the male's biting down on the neck, which he didn't really do there. He was mouthing her neck very gently, and the female did not swipe back at him as he dismounted her, which means they are both well in the swing of making love, and isn't this cute that they now cuddle up next to one another and wait, who knows, maybe another 15 or 20 minutes before their next bout. So, I've got Chantel singing "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" in my ear. If only my voice was as good as hers. And I certainly can feel the love tonight. We've actually got some guests in camp, and we're not necessarily planning on making love with them, but it's lovely to have some new faces in camp, and we are planning on having a barbecue this evening to welcome them and get to know them a little bit better. They are from National Geographic, and they are here for the next week or so. So wonderful to have 3 guests, and looking forward to show them around, and hopefully, as of tomorrow, I believe they're going to be out enjoying moments like this with us in the flesh. Very wonderful. Now, I am thinking of possibly leaving these lovers to a bit of privacy and heading off back into the area where we could hopefully find the Angama pride. It's a pride of 4 lionesses and I think 12 tiny little cubs. As you can tell, my filing cabinets together with my abacus are not in sync or in good shape. But either way, there are some hungry or possibly hungry lionesses with lots of little mouths to feed, and hopefully they will be a little bit more exciting to follow than these guys who, as you can see, are cuddling, and for us to just spy on them permanently would make us the third wheel, and we don't want to necessarily be the third wheel as they make love. So we're going to continue